But now we're heading into the real palace of the popes and later into St. Peter's itself. We're now in the Vatican City, and we are going to be taking you on a guided tour of the Vatican Museum with our local Rome guide. The focus here will be on the art history, in particular the art history of the Renaissance and Michelangelo and Raphael. Time for a few postcards on the way into the museum. We were lucky this afternoon, there was hardly any line. It's a good time to go, just about lunchtime. And you zip right in and begin your tour.
I will show you the most important parts of these museums. First, the pine cone court, that is called the pine cone, but this bronze pine cone, that is a sculpture made between the 1st and the 2nd century AD, and it works like a fountain. Sistine Chapel. What's that? It's the most important, the most sacred chapel inside the Vatican City. But the most important part of the Sistine Chapel is the decoration. It's completely decorated by frescoes. And we have 3 different periods of decoration and of frescoes. The first period is the beginning of Renaissance period. The most important artist of this period, Perugino, Pinturicchio, Botticelli, Rosselli, Ghirlandaio, was the most important and the most famous artist of the Renaissance. It was the beginning of the Renaissance. You will see all the history of the life of Moses. And the opposite side, on the right side, the history of life of Jesus Christ.
The Sistine Chapel is most famous, of course, for the ceiling frescoes by Michelangelo and the Last Judgment. But there are also many other important works of art inside the chapel. You notice the panels around the lower parts of the wall. Many important Renaissance painters created these, and they're often overlooked by the visitor to the Sistine Chapel, but not by us in our in-depth look at the art history of Rome. Beautiful works of art become even more interesting when you understand the meaning and symbolism that lies behind them.
He had not only a religious aim, but even a political, because of it was to confirm the power of the Church. And one of the most important frescoes that we can find in the wall is the central fresco in the life of Jesus Christ, the handing over of the keys. The moment by Perugino, the moment in which Jesus Christ gave the keys to St. Peter, is the birth of the Church. St. Peter is considered the first pope, the founder of the Church. The moment in which Jesus Christ gave him all his powers, he gave not only to a man, but to the Church. A temple, a pagan temple that became a Christian church. You can see in the new way of art, the perspective is perfectly calculated here. Look at the lines that are depicted on the square. They always and they go always to the focal point. The Renaissance began with the study of perspective and with the discovering of old Rome. Julius II was one of the most important popes. It was the Cardinal Giuliano della Rovere. And during his period in which he was cardinal, he collected a lot of ancient Roman sculpture. The Pope, Julius II, wanted to charge Michelangelo to depict the ceiling. So Michelangelo began the decoration of Sistine Chapel. So he worked for about 5 years inside the Sistine Chapel in condition you can imagine. He had a very high bridge on which he stands, but he always has to look up he didn't permit to anybody to enter inside when he was working. He closed the Sistine Chapel to all, even the Pope. We are on the second step of Renaissance. It's the Renaissance by Michelangelo. It's another thing. The perspective in the central part, the creation of work. But the most important moment, and it's the last one that he depicted, is the creation of Adam, the first man. Michelangelo, don't forget that Michelangelo was a sculptor. First of all, was a sculptor. And even when he worked like a painter, he always utilized his technique of sculpture. And he always represented the people like ancient sculptors. Then the temptation and the truth of paradise and the flood. And the beginning of a new life with Noah. All around he placed some Sibyl and prophets. 30 years later, Michelangelo has to come back inside the Sistine Chapel for the last decorations works that was made inside the Sistine Chapel. The Last Judgment. The style changed completely. If in the ceiling we are always during the Renaissance period, here we are going to the Barocco. We are not in the Barocco, but is between the Baroque, the Renaissance and the Barocco. But if you look, it's all like a vortex who turn around Jesus Christ, the central Jesus Christ. It's like an Hercules. It's like the torso of Belvedere that we will see after the Hercules. We always saw before Jesus Christ on the cross, Jesus Christ that suffered and so on. Here is Jesus Christ judged. And near him, the Virgin Mary is more classical. On that side, all the elect that are going up to paradise. And on that side, the hell. The end of the life.
Michelangelo's work in the Sistine Chapel is the greatest series of paintings that were ever created. And it really helps to enhance your appreciation of them to visit it with a local guide who explains it all. But it's not the only work of art that you want to visit in the Vatican Museum. Too many people come to the Vatican and just make a beeline for the Sistine Chapel, and they miss out on these other exquisite works of art. Here's the Apollo Belvedere. It's a Roman statue based on a Greek original. And the Laocoon and the Belvedere torso are two of the most important classical pieces in the Vatican. There's a gilded Hercules, a big tub from the Golden House of Nero, and many, many other marble statues in the Vatican. We'll be walking through a whole series of marble statue galleries, and the floors too have some items of importance. Here's an original Roman mosaic from the 3rd century. The crypts of St. Constantine and Helen are in here as well as we continue on our visit.
Now we go upstairs through the galleries. This first part is called the Gallery of Candelabra by the candelabra, marble candelabras. And all the sculpture that you can find here was found in the residence of the most important personalities of Rome. But look at the eyes of this sculpture. They are black eyes.
It's always a good idea to sit down and rest in the midst of a museum visit, so take advantage of any benches you might see. And then we continue into a hall of tapestries.
And they represent the history of the life of Jesus Christ. It's called the Galleries of Geographical Maps. On right and left side you will see all the region of Italy. We are inside the ancient apartment of the Pope. The only original that has remained is the floor with the mosaic that was taken here from Ostia, the ancient Roman port, and it became from the 3rd century AD. Now we are going to the Raffaello stanze. So these are the ancient apartments of the Pope Julius II. It's called the room of Constantine because of all the frescoes that decorate this room.
And then our Punahou teacher, Pete Hansen, talks about Raphael.
School of Athens, right. Who painted it? Raphael, good. If you look at the whole composition itself, okay, it's one of those, the modern day, each is a representation of the modern day of thinkers, of great thinkers that they were there. The perspective, that's one of the biggest things about this whole thing is the perspective. How everything moves back to a central point between the two main characters, which again, of course, is the birth of philosophy, thinking, etc. Okay? So you get that whole concept of that and everything radiating around it. You get that whole circular motion that comes through it. There is supposed to be Michelangelo in here, and you guys remember which one it was?
The purple, what is it?
The purple
so it looks
one, right?
Yeah. So it looks dark. Oh, darn.
Is that him? Yeah, he looks like his name is Michelangelo.
Yeah. Do you know how frescoes are made?
Plaster.
They mix the color with the plaster.
Right, it's all plaster. So imagine to get that translucency effect of skin, what they would have to do in order to get that plaster or that color effect is one layer upon thin layer upon thin layer upon thin layer. So again, that building up of the color and everything else from plaster itself. This is a huge change in the whole Renaissance from the whole sense of looking at perspective and how the foreshortening and everything else again works.
This one represents God and is divided in two parts, up and down. Upstairs is the sky, is the paradise. Downstairs is the earth. On top, the apostles. Down, the cardinal, bishops. On the other side, the mythology, the beautiful, the art, all the art, the music and all. In the center you will see Apollo, and all around the most important goddess that protected all the art. Let's go down the next.
From the Vatican Museum, we now enter the most beautiful building ever created, in my opinion and in many others' opinions, the Basilica of St. Peter's. This is an awesome piece of architecture. Michelangelo's Pietà is just one of 500 statues inside, and there are 50 chapels. There are some very big statues, such as these Cupids, much bigger than life-size, which helps make the building more of a human scale. This awesomely huge church, the largest church in the world. It was designed and worked on by many different architects, but Bernini and Michelangelo, Bramante and Maderno were some of the most important artisans who were involved in creating this amazing church. The dome is by Michelangelo. It was his final work. And Bernini's baldacchino stands over the main altar. Notice the twisted spiral columns in marble behind it, which perhaps inspired Bernini. An original bronze of St. Peter, and you see marble details everywhere. A lot of the stucco design was applied by Bernini in the final touches of the church's creation. And we have a walkthrough with our guide who explains a lot of the highlights to us and, for example, shows us paintings. They're not paintings, they're actually mosaics. The Vatican artisans converted a Raphael painting of the Transfiguration into a mosaic, tiny pieces of colored marble stone. Well, we have an in-depth visit, and then it's time to head out into the piazza and continue along with the next steps of our tour. We'll show you some of the other highlights that you must see when you're visiting Rome.